What's up, everyone? It's Randall Cunningham, QB1, here with Phil Harris for another episode of Beyond the Boot. Phil, it is another great episode, another great weekend of high school football, and on top of that, Alabama truly gets rolling this week.
Yeah, definitely so. We had week 0, some teams didn't play. We had several around the area that still played jamboree games or played jamboree games the week before, but that didn't actually get started. So it's a full slate this week.
You know, this is the strange thing about it. There is such a gap now between Tennessee and Alabama. We are headed to week 3, you know? So
yeah.
There is and Georgia's in week 3. But a lot of talk about rolling the football season back a little bit, Phil, up here in Tennessee. What's your opinion of that?
Well, of course, Tennessee, Georgia, the calendar kind of fell where in Alabama they just left it where it was. So it puts the semifinals into the quarterfinal round is in Thanksgiving week. And that's the way it was back when I played. They backed the season up because it was running into basketball to give basketball more time. But yeah, I don't see nothing wrong with, because the thing is, though, we have too many weeks where it's just too extremely hot. And so, like this past week, it was atrocious for everybody. Of course, I didn't hear of anybody having any real heat issues. They backed games up. They took precautions. So everything went well, but still, it's miserable for fans when it's 95 degrees at kickoff.
I'm sitting in a booth with self-contained air conditioner that couldn't even keep it cool. We kicked off at 8, then had a 30-minute halftime fill. But in the third quarter, I was reading the temperature, and it felt like 98 was the weather. Can you imagine on the field under hundreds of lights? It had to be approaching the 100 mark.
Oh, yeah, definitely so. And, and I can remember, when it's early in the season, you're in shape as far as running goes, but you're not in game shape. That's a whole totally different entity when it comes to high school football. I know usually you don't hit that till maybe week 3 where you really are in game shape, where you get that second wind. Week 1 and week 2, you kind of struggle, and you have to take breaks and you have to take water breaks. But once the weather starts breaking, you don't necessarily have to have those things once you get into playing shape. So it's tough on the body. It really is. And it's also tough mentally.
Well, Phil, a lot of action this weekend in all 3 of the states that we cover. And you're right, Alabama probably a little less, but it is tough mentally. But this weekend, college football kicks off, traditional Labor Day weekend kickoff, games going full bore in Alabama. This is traditionally football weekend, Labor Day.
Yeah, definitely is. That's when everybody, it's got football. They've had high school football on their mind all summer, and then all of a sudden, bam, it's time for the college season. That gives everybody a whole weekend worth of football.
Yep.
And so, if you want football, here it is.
We're going to a college football game and encourage anyone that's got a team locally playing. And we'll get into UTC's schedule here. They're actually playing at North Alabama. So that's a short ride from Chattanooga. It's a short ride from Huntsville. Definitely going to encourage some people to get out of that. Going to let you host the Alabama segment. I got a few scores too, but let's start in Tennessee and Georgia and just get your gut reaction. First, let's start out of state. There was some big cross-state matchups, and I just want to get some reaction to those. Let's start with one that's South Alabama versus Nashville, but 2 teams ranked number 1 in the state. Saraland beats Lipscomb Academy with Tennessee commit Edwin Spillman 31-30 in OT. That sounds like it was a football game.
Well, there's one of the players at Saraland. He's one of the top receivers in the country. He's committed to Alabama. So there's some good football players on both those teams. And Saraland, of course, I know they're good, but they're good to beat Lipscomb because, that's two programs that are very, very good. Lipscomb gave IMG Academy all they wanted. So
Absolutely.
I guarantee you Saraland's got a great football team, and that's one of them that could have went either way. But it was two outstanding teams and probably a lot of football players on both those teams that will play at the next level.
Absolutely. At Finley Stadium, McCallie 41, Woodward Academy 21. Again, two powerhouse private schools meeting at UTC. McCallie, of course, traditional power up here. Carson Gentle, the Tennessee commit, on the team.
Yeah, I think that was a major test for McCallie. I think that's kind of the game they were looking at. They were really going to be tested, and they passed that test. So McCallie's probably going to be hard to handle from this point forward. I just hated that Baylor and McCallie have just at that point we're in that private school to where your Ray counties and your Red Banks can't play against Baylor and McCallie because that's a shame because those teams, it would be nice to see those teams get to play against each other, and I know more often than not Baylor and McCallie's going to be better, but it's got to the point too it's really not fair for them to be playing some of the schools around. Because you'd like to see Baylor and McCallie. What a great draw it would be, say a Red Bank and McCallie matchup.
Or I tell you, this year I think I'd like to see Bradley Central McCallie because I think Bradley might be as loaded as McCallie. Speaking of Baylor, they go all the way to New Jersey to play Seton Hall Prep, 42-7. But that shows you the level they're on. I know last year they went out to California and played.
Yeah, definitely. So, of course, these teams, they've got to find teams that'll play because, you run out of teams from around here. And plus, when you got the money they have, that's a great trip for the kids, and that's how you get people to come to school when you make trips like that. That's, that's kind of a recruiting tool to get those kids to come because you get to travel in places like that because, that was a lot of fun for those kids.
Absolutely. Now, one that was a public school matchup, and I think Marion County may have tried to recreate the North Jackson, South Pittsburgh, just up the road from both of us. Marion County 10, Dade County 6, cross-state route playing.
Yeah, that was, it turned out to be a very good game. Of course, Dade County, last 2 or 3 years have been pretty good. Of course, they will host North Sand Mountain this week. But, they gave Marion County all they wanted. I bet that was a great football game to go see.
I bet it was, too. Spoiled football fan Howie Chaney sitting in Atlanta's $3 billion dome says build high schools, dome stadiums, Phil. That's his solution to heat.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about. He and I were talking back and forth about possibly going to the Geraldine and Coosa game, and we both decided, well, the last time I was at Geraldine, they didn't have a dome, so I don't know if I want to get out in that heat or not. I'm used to that controlled environment, about a 72-degree studio, so if it's too hot or too cold, I don't want too much of a part of that stuff. So you get conditioned, and it's kind of tough.
Well, I had some heat up in the press box at East Ridge, and we'll get to that in a minute. Getting some of the area Chattanooga scores. We talked about it last week. Bledsoe, Sequatchie, what would happen to them? Bledsoe struggles with a Cumberland County, wins 14-13. Bledsoe just survives, Phil.
Yeah. Well, offensively, they're not where they want to be yet. You saw that in the Sequatchie County game. They still got a long way to go. But it's one of those where this football team is used to winning, so they're going to find a way to win those types of ball games. But, you can tell Bledsoe County still got a long way to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Area soon to be superpower, I'm afraid. Boyd Buchanan, 31. Brainerd, nothing. Boyd's starting to flex that muscle a little bit, Phil.
Yeah, I think they struggled a little bit with Brainerd in the first half. Probably struggled with their athleticism, but were able to pull away in the second half. And I'm sure that's one of those on a hot night was a war of attrition. because probably Boyd Buchanan's a little bit deeper and a little bit stronger than Brainerd is. But that was still a big win for Boyd Buchanan to start the season. Of course, too, Brainerd didn't get to play week one.
Exactly the point I was going to make.
Sometimes that kind of limits you because Boyd Buchanan maybe had a little better time of getting things squared away a little bit better, and Brainerd having a game being canceled, that's tough going into week two.
Absolutely, and Howard struggled too. I did reach out to Coach D. He's going to come on here and talk about that Howard program at some point. So that will be really super nice for us. I want to talk about next, Phil. Boo Carter and Bradley Central, so impressive. Boo Carter, I don't know if you saw the highlights, just made a run that was like an NFL type run. Bradley Central 40, defending state champion Tyner 7. 2 weeks, the defending state champion has gave up plus 40.
Yeah, evidently they lost a lot to graduation, but that's 2 tough games to start out with.
Absolutely.
Who Tyner has picked on weeks 1 and 2. But, Tyner is one of those schools that has a hard time finding teams to play because when you're as successful as they have been, nobody wants to play you. You end up having to step out of class a little bit. And when you have a little bit of a down year, you pay for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Chattanooga Christian School that I know you saw a scrimmage of Valley Head, 54-6. Everybody talked about the demise of Chattanooga Central because of a couple of high-profile transfers, and Boo Carter being one of those. Seems like Chattanooga Christian's got kind of bloated again, Phil.
And well, in their classification,
in their class,
they've had to play. You start out playing Macaulay. I mean, most public schools is not going to do very well against them. But Chattanooga Christian, they don't have a lot of players. I mean, they're limited in numbers, but when they get to play on their level of teams, they're going to be very good because they're very athletic. They've lost a couple of players. In Boo Carter was one. I think their top receiver went to South Pittsburgh. But still, they're a very talented football team. I know they're very good up front.
And again, Central's going to struggle, and it's unfortunate. Central was the power of Chattanooga at one point, and it seems like they've struggled consistently for 20 years now, and I hate to see it. And another school that struggled this week, and a surprising score to me, Chattanooga Prep 30, Howard 12, and I believe fully in my heart, Chattanooga Prep playing their third game, Howard not playing. That plays a role.
Oh, yeah, definitely so. Because they got to see themselves in a jamboree, and maybe they got some mistakes, squared away. But, they didn't get to play week 1 against Brainerd. And, the kids were probably a little bit down because of it, too, because of all the stuff that was going around, a lot of distractions. And so, maybe they will settle in and get focused now and go back to square one and be able to improve. Because now, from week 1 to week 2 is when you make your most improvement. So I think that'll be true with Howard.
I was able to see that new Howard football stadium this week, Phil. It's going to be something nice. It's going to be a showpiece for that school.
Yeah, definitely so. That helps and, gives kids something to take pride in.
Cleveland beats McMinn County. Last week, McMinn County loses to Bradley Central. This week, they lose to Cleveland. So if they play Walker Valley next week, I'm betting it all on Walker Valley. Seems like they're 0-2 for Bradley County right now.
Yeah. So, that's definitely true. So
McMinn Central 44, Seymour out of the Knoxville area 7. And the next score, again, disappointing to me. So much hopes at Hixson this year. And again, losing their quarterback, Luke French, early in the year. They go up to traditional state power, Meigs County, and lose 35-16. Phil, when you're a smaller school or I don't know that Hixson's small, but when you only got one deep at quarterback or tailback and you lose them in the jamboree, it's tough.
Oh, yeah, definitely is. Traditional schools will rebound. Hixson's one of those schools that's trying to build. So when you have a setback, sometimes you kind of lose it mentally. But, Hixson's one of those teams that needs a win real, real bad. And then I think they will settle in.
Monterey 21, Rockwood nothing. Mount Juliet Christian 36, Lookout Valley 28. Lookout Valley's been on the losing end, Phil, but they played better than maybe the last few years. And it's nice to see from Lookout Valley.
Yeah, because, a lot of times they would get, you would see a lot of their scores and they would get hammered. It's good to see them be competitive. It's good for that community to be competitive. And, every once in a while they'll have a real good team, but it seems like they really struggle at times. So it's good to see them being competitive the first 2 weeks.
Notre Dame and how the mighty has fallen. Signal Mountain, Notre Dame 52, Signal Mountain 30.
Yeah. The Signal Mountain, they have, struggled a little bit. But, I think some of that is, of course, Red Bank, Red Bank Signal Mountain used to be together.
Yeah.
And Signal Mountain has their own high school. And I think that may have taken away a lot from Red Bank. But I think Red Bank now has, kind of gained that back. And who takes a beating for that is Signal Mountain. So I think it's in that area where you don't have room for both of those teams to win. And people's going to go to whoever's winning.
It's like a friend of mine, his son's a pretty good football player, and he's actually zoned for both. And he's like, I'm going to wait and see who's better in 2 years and tell you that's where he's going to go,
Yeah, because then you have a good mix at Red Bank, and, and that makes them very good. There for a little while, they struggled, but that was at the time when Signal Mountain was on Cloud 9. And that's kind of balanced out now.
Sequatchie County, 59, Eastridge, 24. This is a close game. I tell people that don't let that score throw you. It was 24-18 at half. And just a perfect third quarter by Sequatchie County, Phil.
Yeah, well, so far the first 2 weeks of the season they've been second half teams, so that they've kind of sort of showed their muscle in the second half. And two, Randy, probably I'd say on the offensive side of the ball, especially at quarterback, it took them a game and a half, but they may be finally coming into their own. And you knew it was going to happen, that the offense was going to catch up with the defense. And I think you may have saw a little bit of that Friday night.
Absolutely. Explosion leads. Sam Ebbets, Sequatchie quarterback, off of this week's effort, leads 3A in practically every category, Phil.
Yeah, well, that's good. Yeah, because, he's got a good supporting cast around him. He's just got to make the plays.
Sequoyah, 55, Tellico Plains, 19. Sequoyah, a team that's 2-8, 1-9. The last 2 years gets the W. A game that's a rivalry in Chattanooga may mean more outside of Chattanooga than it does, inside Chattanooga than it does outside. Soddy Daisy 20, Ooltewah 13.
Yeah, that was, Soddy Daisy got hammered pretty good by Ray County, so you wondered how they were going to be. Of course, Ooltewah struggled a little bit lately, so that's a big win for Soddy Daisy. But come to find out, Ray County is a whole lot better than people think. We saw them in the Jamboree. We were impressed, but we was wondering, well, when they get to play teams at their own level, how are they going to do? Well, they passed the test against Soddy, and of course, they come up with the big win this week. But it just goes to show you Soddy Daisy's not quite as bad as we might have thought. So they picked up a big win over Ooltewah, and I think that was a huge win for Soddy Daisy. They needed that one.
And we'll talk about that Ray County game here in a minute. There's a reason I'm holding it out to the end. Stone Memorial with a trouncing of traditional power Sweetwater. Stone Memorial 40, Sweetwater 16.
Yeah, because Sweetwater's been pretty good lately. They're not on the level with, some of the teams, but here lately they've been pretty darn good. And so I was kind of surprised by that score.
Walker Valley 47, Polk County nothing. And also in my area, Whitwell holds off Greenback 15-12.
Well, they picked up 2 wins. They've been close wins, but this team is starting to build some confidence, and it's good to see. because we saw them in the Jamboree, and I was very much impressed with them. And, like we've talked about before, they're going to go as far as their quarterback carries, and they're not going to blow anybody out. But if they can hang in the football game and make it a physical game, they've got a shot.
Of course, let's get to the game of the week in Tennessee, and also what's going to be our second team of the week. Rhea County 28, Red Bank 21. Everybody from both sides, I have a lot of contacts on both of them. I've not heard as many people from Red Bank say, Rhea County's really good. And also the people from Rhea County saying Red Bank's really good. I think this is two football teams that are better than maybe Rhea County specifically. Maybe a little better than I thought they were, but I think Red Bank is everything I thought they were in 4A.
Yeah, because it's 4A against 5A, but I think the biggest impression this was with Red County is what we saw the first 2 weeks is on offense. A lot of speed, big play potential, and I think that was key in the game against Red Bank because a lot of teams are not going to out-athlete Red Bank, but Rhea County is a very athletic football team. They've got some speed in the backfield, and they were able to run the football, and that's the reason they won that ball game.
Coach Pemberton, when we interviewed him on the air over the Jamboree and talked to him, Phil, he had a sense of excitement about his team, and I think he felt some pressure coming off that 2-8 year, and now to have Red Bank come to Rhea County and get that W, that says a lot about the direction of Rhea County.
Yeah, definitely. So you feel like they're going to win some ball games. The numbers is good. I think in that opening drive, they were kind of second-guessing themselves a little bit. Got adjusted to what, in that Jamboree, what Bledsoe was doing to them, and then they come out and scored 2 plays, and then the kids started having fun, and it's just continued on from that point.
Ethan Davis at Rhea County, just a phenomenal back. The stat of the week, Phil, Rhea County rushed for plus 400 yards against Red Bank.
Yeah, that's what I saw. That's the reason they won that football game, because they were able to control the ball by running it. And if you're going to beat a Red Bank team, you've got to do that because their athletes are going to get to you at some point. But if you keep them off the field and control the clock a little bit, you got a shot.
Yeah, and I'm really proud of the Rhea County bunch. After that 2-8 year, I know there's a lot of fingers, a lot of innuendo, a lot of Coach Pemberton talk, but to start this season 2-0, and to be in that easier district now, I don't say easier, but that closer to home district feel. I think Rhea County feels more like Rhea County playing in the Chattanooga area instead of all those trips to Knoxville.
Yeah, because you don't know those teams as well. I mean, you get to know them, but it's just a whole lot more special to get to play your Soddy Daisies and Red Banks and people like that because, and that's great for the community too, because the community wants to see Rhea County play those teams. It ain't so much the players as it is the old alumni that comes out and supports the teams. They want to see them play Cleveland and Bradley Central and Red Bank and people like that because that's the teams they're used to playing.
Absolutely. Phil, let's run down to Georgia and get a few scores. And I promise you, the North Georgia folks, we will get some more attention on you. And I think we have a pretty good slate down in North Georgia this week to talk about. Calhoun, traditional Calhoun, maybe the best football program outside of Cartersville in the area. 40, Carver-Atlanta 18.
Yeah, that was. I think they lost week 1, didn't they? So
yeah.
They were able to turn it around and win this one. Of course, Calhoun traditionally hadn't heard as much lately about them because they really haven't made those playoff runs deep into the playoffs. But it's still a great football program. They've got great facilities, great staff. I mean, they do a lot of things well, and that was a big win for me.
This one caught me a little bit by surprise. Gordon Lee, 34, Armucci, 21.
Yeah, it was 14-14 at the half. Of course, Armucci won week 1. Gordon Lee took one on the chin, but I think Gordon Lee had a lot of correctable errors, and I think they kind of sort of turned things around, maybe made some changes on the defense up front, or had to do some things because it was 14-14 at the half, and they were able to outdistance our Murchie in the second half. But I feel like by the end of the year, Gordon Lee's a young football team. I think by the end of the year, they're going to be pretty good.
Well-coached football team.
Yes, definitely so. Yeah, they're in the right places. It's just they've got to start making plays. They didn't tackle very well against Trine, but it was a lot of correctable errors.
Here's one I missed on the out-of-state scores, but Heritage goes to 2-0 after beating rival Renko, beat East Hamilton 28-23 this weekend. Great start of the year to Heritage.
Yeah, definitely so. You're stepping out of state because East Hamilton's pretty good. So Heritage has got a pretty good team. Of course, Renko we know is good.
Yeah.
So that was a huge win. Anytime you can, when you have two teams that play each other out of state, it's also a measuring stick for your program in your state. So that makes Georgia feel a little bit better. Hey, we're as good as these Tennessee schools. And we look at it that way down here. How do Alabama schools match up against Tennessee schools?
Absolutely.
But most of the time, it's the private schools that play each other out of state.
Yeah, absolutely. I look forward to that North Jackson South Pittsburgh game. I think that's a thing that needs to keep going for a long time to come.
Yeah, definitely so.
LFO 33, Marion County 25. North Cobb Christian 34, Ridgeland 0. Northwest Wickfield 43, and the poor struggling Cola Creek 7. And Phil, it 1 year it feels like Cola Creek's going to get it turned around. I know you've probably not seen the campus. It is probably the nicest campus in North Georgia with the best facilities. But they have a tough assignment there. They're just right in the door of Dalton. So many kids, want to go to play football. They go to Dalton and Cola Creek. I wouldn't want to play Cola Creek in the spelling bee, but they just struggle with filling. And oftentimes, new school does. Just 10 years of futility with the football program.
Yeah, well, of course, you got Northwest Whitfield right there, too, because most of the people that were there went to Dalton or Northwest. But the thing is with Kahula Creek is what makes it hard is you don't have much of an alumni base.
Right.
And when you don't have much of an alumni base, it's difficult to build a program. It takes years to build a program. And when you start having alumni base coming through, you get better. So, they're going to have a good team every once in a while, but then you're going to drop back because it's very difficult to maintain in a program like that. Northwest Whitfield's been around a long time. They're going to, they're not going to win every ball game they play, but if they have a bad year, it's probably going to be a 4-6 year, not 0-10 year. So that's what makes it difficult for those programs to maintain.
Southwest Whitfield beat Gordon Central 16-0.
Yeah, Southwest, they struggled at times, but that was a big win for them. I think they get Gordon Lee this week, and that's a big matchup there. As Gordon Lee's trying to kind of get their feet wet, and after coming off of a big win, Southeast and Gordon Lee, that's going to be a good matchup.
Chance for Gordon Lee to get to 2-1, and I think that's a remarkable start for Gordon Lee.
Yeah, the home opener too, so I'm sure they'll be excited.
Well, Phil, do you want to grab us and take us around the Alabama area and some scores?
Yeah, well, I don't know if I remember all the scores, but, there was some big games down here. I know that Geraldine knocked off Coosa Christian 26-0. And Coosa, we know in Class 1A is very good. Geraldine lost a little bit up front, but we still expect them to be very good. Tyler Mann had a great night rushing the football and catching the football, and they beat Coosa 26-0. Of course, the Top Cat Trophy was the Fort Payne and Scottsboro game. What a game that was. Scottsboro scored in their first 7 drives, leading 49-24 at the half. And Fort Payne come back and made a game of it. Actually got within 49-44, and Scottsboro scored a touchdown to put it away and ended up 56-51. Of course, they were WQSB's high school team of the week this week. First time they've beaten Fort Payne had won that game 4 straight years, so they took home the Top Cat trophy. So that was a big win. North Sand, a little bit of a surprise. They knocked off Valley Head 15-0. As Valley Head really struggled offensively, had turnovers, didn't make some fourth down conversions, and North Sand Mountain hung in there and won that game in the fourth quarter. So that's a big win for them. I know some of the other games around. Woodville picked up their first win under Coach Poole. That was huge for them. Let's see. Also, I was trying to think of Spring Garden was able to knock off Sandrock. Collinsville, they played in the Jamboree. Their first game's this week, so they won't play till this week.
I have a few games I was going to ask you about when you're done, too.
Yeah, go ahead. You just ask me anytime. I didn't write down any of the scores because a lot of times I wrote down who plays who this week, but I really didn't write down a lot of the scores. I know there were some big wins for some teams, but a lot of our real close area, like Sylvania, Fife, Eider, a lot of those schools don't play till this week's when they all get started.
Some games I noted, Cherokee County opens up. Cherokee County's been real good lately, Phil. Cherokee County 48, Alexandria 14. Is Cherokee County just reloading?
Yeah, well, I think Alexandria may be a little bit down, but yeah, Cherokee County dominated that game from the get-go. I mean, they just took it to, they were up 34-0 at one time. I think that was the halftime score. So they were very impressive in week 0. Cherokee County is ranked number 2 in Class 4A. So, we're expecting big things from them. They got all the way to the finals last year.
Decatur Heritage 63, Section 15. I was really surprised by the size of that score.
Yeah, I really was too. I know Section's a little bit down, got a new coach. Coach Riley Edwards is trying to get that program on its feet. But Decatur Heritage last year, they really struggled during the season. But, I guess they've kind of turned things around. That was a big win. We'll find out. They've got a big game this week. But they were very impressive week 1.
How about this one? This is one that it took me completely by surprise. Douglas 20, Susan Moore nothing.
Well, Susan Moore's a little bit down, but Douglas, they have gotten to where they have done a great job at Douglas in the last 3 or 4 years of kind of establishing their program. Where there's been years where they have really, really struggled. But these are the kind of games they're starting to win, games that they're supposed to win. And I reckon it's a good, steady performance and a big win. And they won at Susan Moore, so Douglas off to a 1-0 start. But it's a pretty veteran group he's got this year.
A team that I really think launched Sylvania in the playoffs was getting past Madison Academy. Madison Academy 42, Deshler 6. I assume Madison Academy's Madison Academy.
Oh, yeah. That Class 3A is going to be unbelievably tough. Of course, you're going to have Piedmont, of course, and that's Geraldine, and you've got Sylvania, and you're going to have Madison Academy. When the playoffs start, I mean, it's going to be very good because there's some good football teams around, and I'm sure Madison Academy is going to be one of the better ones in North Alabama.
But I go back to some comments that Tyler Vans made in his region. A very good football team is going to stay home because there's 4 gets in and there's 5 very good football teams.
Yeah, because Geraldine was one of those, Sylvania was one of those, Piedmont was one of those, and so there is going to be somebody left out that's pretty good. Because even Plainview got off to a good start last year. Priceville, who finished, I think, 11-1 last year. They beat Plainview last year over at Priceville. Plainview played a very good football game. Didn't have any turnovers and was able to knock off Priceville 21-14. So, Coach Pruitt, I've always said Coach Pruitt, where he makes his most improvement is from year 1 to year 2.
Yeah.
And Plainview picked up that win, and I think you're going to see a much more improved Plainview football team. They're going to be a tough out for anybody.
I know we gave Team of the Week here on River City Media to Ray County, but that there's an argument for Scottsboro bringing that Top Cat trophy back.
Oh, definitely so. I felt like they had a good opportunity. They had 17 returning starters. Coach Bell's in year 3, and they run that, option offense where basically, and they read it and they run it well, and it's tough to defend. And Fort Payne gave up 7 touchdowns and 7 drives in the first half. They were able to adjust at halftime, but this Scottsboro team's going to be pretty good, and that's a huge win for Scottsboro to start the year.
Phil, I didn't get Alabama and Georgia's schedule, but I do have some week 3 games in Tennessee of interest, and I just want to throw these out to you real fast and get your opinions or thoughts or just a gut feeling here real fast. Week 3 matchup, Cleveland at Walker Valley. 2 Bradley County teams and two teams played well early on.
Yeah. Cleveland's been a lot more impressive than I thought they might be. I didn't know if they was going to be on the level with the Bradley Central, but it sounds like Cleveland's going to be pretty good. They've had 2 wins right out of the gate. They're 2-0, and it's been impressive too.
Here's a game that caught my eye early on, and I think it's a must-win for Bledsoe County. Bledsoe County goes to Sell Creek, where Jason Fitzgerald, former Meigs County coach, is at now. And from what I understand, a very promising program building at Sell Creek. But if you're 2A Bledsoe, you got to go to Sell Creek and win that football game.
Yeah, that's a must-win to continue the improvement because this team is still working itself out, finding identity on offense. And this is a good week to, see what they've got. Of course, struggled a little bit last week, but maybe Cumberland County is a lot better football team than we thought. We don't know yet. We'll find out. Because some teams will come out and surprise you. Just like down here, surprised me. North Sand Mountain beating Valley Head, probably the biggest surprise of all the games I heard of down here.
And I think a few places that it's must win for them, or we head south, is Hixson goes to Ooltewah, a tough draw. East Ridge, after giving up 59 to Sequatchie, goes to Red Bank, and Tyner has to go to McMinn County. Those are 3 football teams that are struggling right now, going to 3 pretty good football teams.
And young Tyner has really bit the nail. And that's very tough to start out the season with the 3 opponents they've had. Yeah, and East Ridge is struggling a little bit right now, probably more on the defensive side of the ball than anything. And going into Red Bank, and Red Bank's going to be licking their wounds after that loss to Ray County. They're going to be out for blood. So Red Bank's going to be ready for East Ridge. It's going to be tough for East Ridge to surprise them. But I don't know. Maybe this is the week they'll put it together. So we will see.
Sequatchie County 2-0 hosts 2-0 Watertown, a traditional power in 1A, 2A football, moving up to 3A. It's a battle of the undefeateds. And I can tell you, Phil, and this is not the coaches saying this. This is Randall saying this. In this district, this region, there's 3 really good teams. There's probably 1 great team and 2 good teams. The 2 good teams are Sequatchie and Watertown. The winner of this game, the path to a home playoff game, is Community and Grundy County. So if you get this one, you almost assure yourself of being maybe that 2nd seed if you can't beat Giles County.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be the key game. And you hate that to be early in the season that you kind of sort of draw and circle around. But this is big. This is big for both teams. And Sequatchie County getting them at home, I think, will be a big aid. But Sequatchie County has to be playing with a lot of confidence right now. A big win over Bledsoe. They go on the road and they pass a tough test at East Ridge. And, they've got to be feeling good about themselves coming in with this Watertown game.
And it's right before you go to Marion, and then you go back home for South Pitt. So it doesn't get any easier for Sequatchie County.
No, it definitely don't. The schedule is not really very favorable for them, but these kids love it. I mean, they love playing these kind of meaningful games. I would, because it's like when we used to play. We had our area games but we liked playing against the county teams better. We did the area games or regional games. We would much rather play your Marion County and South Pittsburgh to see how you would match up. It was kind of like, well, we got a region game, but shoot, I'd rather beat Marion County.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of the way it goes around here. We want to beat Ider. Yeah, we know we got to beat Sandrock, but we'd rather beat Ider and Sylvania and Plainview. So, as kids, you kind of sort of, kind of lose track of how important the region games are.
And another one of those battles that cross state lines, St. X of Ohio comes to McCallie, and that's another big time prep school battle.
Yeah, and I wonder if what they're in for, because McCallie has just really whitewashed anybody. I wonder why McCallie and IMG Academy hadn't faced off.
I don't know.
Because that's one I would love to see.
Rhea County, going back to their old stomping ground, goes up against a very good Knox Central team.
Yeah, that'd be big for them because they've passed 2 major tests. They're 2-0 on the year, riding high right now, and this is kind of going to probably kind of tell them how good they really are.
And then one more game, Phil, and we might move on and talk a little college football. I saw this one earlier in the week, and I thought this could be interesting. CAK from Knoxville versus Boyd Buchanan. The battle of the I was talking away. That one's got some implications. I know they're not in the same region, but I talk to Coach Van a lot of times about those Valley teams just got to play each other to get it out of their system, I think.
Yeah, definitely. So, you talking about Geraldine and Fife?
Yes.
Yeah. Those two, they're right next door to each other, and it's a measuring stick for both of them. A couple of years ago, Geraldine surprised Fife. Fife was able to pull away in the second half and beat Geraldine last year. Going to be interesting how this goes. Both teams lost a lot of people up front on the offensive line, but they both have a lot of their skill people back. So It's going to be interesting. Geraldine's got a game under their belt. They had a tough matchup with Coosa. Of course, Fife played last week in the Jamboree. They played Piedmont, tied 14-14. So, this is going to be a good one, I think. It's going to be definitely a big crowd draw.
I told a lot of people, even though that was a Jamboree, probably no 2 better high school programs than Piedmont and Fife lining up and getting after it.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, because Piedmont's ranked way up there in Class 3A. Of course, Fife's number 1 in 2A. The other game's going on. Of course, another one we're expecting big things out of. It was good. They're ranked in the top 10 in Class 2A. Also, they're hosting Lexington. They had to come from behind last year to win over Lexington because this is going to be a good test for Pisgah to start the season. Cedar Bluff plays at Sandrock. This is two traditional rivals. Both teams need to win. Cedar Bluff lost week 1 to I can't even remember who it was now, but they got beat week 1. I want to say it's Winterboro. Yeah, Winterboro beat Cedar Bluff week 1. Sandrock lost to Spring Garden week 1. So these two need to win. Sylvania kicks it off. They go to Sachs. Sachs got beat pretty good week 1. So Sylvania hits the road. And I guarantee you those kids are anxious. They're ready to get it started.
For those that realize it and those that don't, tune in Wednesdays at 7 for the Coach Tyler Van Show here on River City Media. We'll have Coach Van on to get his exclusive comments about that battlefield, and it'll be interesting. Coach Van really has a lot of respect for this Sachs team, and I think last year getting by Sachs is one of the things that built confidence for this team.
Yeah, definitely so. They're always very athletic. I don't know if they're quite as good as they have been, but they're still going to be an athletic bunch, and they're dangerous. So,
yeah, absolutely.
You don't want them to gain any confidence. That's for sure. Somebody's going to have to get after them defense.
And I wanted to make a comment about that Pisgah game. Coach Pruitt likes his group. I remember it at QSB Media Days. He kind of said he stopped everybody. He said, "I don't get to brag on these kids enough." He really likes his football team going into the year.
Yeah, I think he really does. And he's done a great job at Pisgah building that program from the Pee Wees up. And, I think they're going to be competitive year in, year out. And I think he was kind of, when he first started Pisgah, was kind of pointing toward this year. Of course, last year he was, he really didn't know what to expect. He felt like he could be good. Things kind of fell their way. I think he now feels like they're established enough that they can be competitive with anybody, game in, game out, night in, night out.
I think so.
Then the other games going on, of course, Hyder opens their first game. They played a Jamboree game against JV, basically, but some of their varsity players played. They played Crossville last week. They go to Asbury, so a good chance for them to pick up a win right off the bat. They only won 2 last year. They've got 9 seniors, and Hyder is expecting to be a whole lot better. Of course, a great matchup. Probably just down the list from the North Jackson-Scottsboro matchup, because it's such a traditional rivalry. Cherokee County plays at Piedmont. That's going to be a dandy matchup at the Field of Champions down at Piedmont. That'll be one to go see. I guarantee that the stands will be full on each side. So it's just going to be a great football game, naturally.
Wow, it's a big week in Alabama.
Yeah, of course, Fort Payne, they travel to Etowah. Etowah got surprised week 1. Springville beat them. Springville only won 1 game last year, but week 1, Springville at home knocked off Etowah in an upset. Of course, Fort Payne's trying to bounce back from that loss to Scottsboro. So that's 2 teams that are getting together that don't want to start 0-2. So this is going to be a great battle. And then the other team, North Sun Mountain, who got off to a great start by beating Valley Head week 1, 15-0. They'll travel to Dade County. That will be a good one to go see, definitely.
Yeah.
These two know each other very well.
Well, I tell you what, this week I'll be calling the Sequatchie Watertown game, and I'm looking forward to it. But it sounds like you and Jeff's going to have a busy studio this week down at QSB.
No, definitely so. This is where a lot of everybody around the area is playing now. There's no jamborees. Everything's for real now. And of course, Northwest Georgia, we got some big matchups going on. I decided to go ahead and I didn't know if you had time to check. So I know Creekview plays at Calhoun, Southeast Whitfield, Gordon Lee. That's a
big game
to go see. Yeah, definitely so. Sonoraville plays at Dalton. These two are right next, close to each other. So that's a big matchup. Northwest Whitfield, Ringo. This could be a good one. These two are not very far apart either, but that's a good matchup. Heritage plays at Lakeview-Fort, Oglethorpe. Gordon Central plays Coosa, and Chattanooga hits the road. They got beat week 1. They play at Temple. So there's some good matchups in Northwest Georgia. Also, not just in Alabama, but it's excited to get this actual week 1 going down here in Alabama because there's some big games going on, and a lot of teams, and you point to ones like Valley Head, you improved from week 1 to week 2. They lost a game maybe they thought they should have won. Well, they did that to North Sand Mountain last year, so they kind of derailed. Valley Head derailed North Sand Mountain last year. Valley Head's got to get off the snide. They play that section. Fort Payne needs a win. They're on the road at Etowah. So, there's some games out there that are important. I know it's only week 2 basically down here, but there's some important games going on.
One comment back to North Georgia feels there's always one team that sneaks out of here 8-2, 9-1. And this year just feels like Heritage is that team, and kind of just on a roll after beating Ringo, and that's another nasty rivalry. Heritage it just seems like this week at LFO got a chance to be 3-0, and have all the momentum Heritage's way.
Yeah, that LFO, of course, they've kind of struggled. So it's a game, a game they can win, definitely. So North Georgia is really getting cranked up now, and it's good to see those teams get cranked up over there. It's ones I've traditionally watched for years and years, and of course Dalton's always the one that walked the walk, but now there's a lot of good football programs around them now, and they kind of sort of get hidden in the back. Where used to they were out front all the time. Everybody used the measure stick was Dalton. It's a lot different now.
Well, Phil, for the folks, and I did get a text asking we're going to start having coaches and players on again. We are. I assure you, it's a tough time to get coaches and players right now, Phil. Just trying to get their season started, and I mean it's a tough time in the coaching profession.
They're trying to settle into a routine, and 2, you got JV games on Tuesdays, and that makes it very busy too. So a lot of the coaches are having enough distractions. They're excited at the first part of the year, and everybody will settle in and will take the time to maybe talk to us more. But you kind of hate to bother them right now because everybody's kind of on pins and needles the first 2 or 3 weeks of the season.
Absolutely. Well, Phil, let's take this last 15 minutes. Let's look at some area college scores. Let's go around the SEC. Plus, let's start with that big UTC North Alabama matchup. Don't know a lot about these two teams, but just the sound of UTC playing North Alabama sounds good to me.
Well, it sounds like UTC wants to run the football because they're definitely pretty good at tailback. North Alabama, I think UTC more often than not should be the better of the 2 teams.
It's
being played over in Florence, so you don't ever know. But this is a great matchup to start the season. UTC can take a bus ride, and it's not very far and be back home pretty quick. So it's an exciting game for fans because it's one of those that they can jump in the car in Chattanooga and be in Florence in about 3 hours maybe.
Yeah.
So, it's a good start for the UTC program to get to play somebody like that.
Just look around the SEC a little bit. I don't know if you noticed or saw any of Vanderbilt opening with a white, but wow, that stadium's a mess, Phil. They had a crane holding up the jumbotron. It's just a mess over there.
Yeah, I saw pictures of it before this week, and that's kind of tough to deal with. Of course, Vanderbilt did okay offensively, but they really struggled. Hawaii really threw the football very well against them, and I think Vanderbilt started out pretty good, but as the game wore on, they really did struggle, and they're going to struggle up front against everybody, and but it's very hard for Vanderbilt. You're bringing in 2 more powerhouses in Oklahoma and Texas, and you just wonder how long a Vanderbilt is going to last in the SEC. I know they like the money, but it's getting to where it's getting to be a killer program, and I'm afraid what's going to start happening with our power conferences is you're going to start seeing the schools like Missouri and Vanderbilt, the schools like that leave and go to a different conference, and then all we're going to have is the big name teams, and the big name teams are going to start going 4-8.
Yeah,
and that's not going to be good.
You could definitely, with this 12-game playoff coming up, I was told somebody in one of the other shows that an 8-4 football team can be a playoff team if those 4 losses were maybe to Alabama, Georgia, Texas, and Tennessee, and in close fashion. That's still a really, really good football team.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've seen a thing where maybe if you had a 12-team playoff, it's very feasible for 5 or 6 SEC teams to get in because of the strength of schedule. And I just don't see that. I just don't like it. You know, say if you go to a 16, because eventually they're going to keep growing it because it's money. And so, I don't know. I just get frustrated with it. You know, you sit here and you put a team in the playoffs that's, even though they went 12-0, they couldn't beat an 8-4 SEC team.
That's
you know, that's the kind of thing I don't like because, you know, because you look at their schedule and you go, good Lord, I wish Tennessee could play Baylor and Texas Tech and all those kids that don't play any defense, you know, because they pile up 60 points a game. But it wouldn't mean they would do very good.
One of the biggest upsets.
Because I think SEC teams get good is because they play against good defenses. Well, Tennessee may pile up 52 points, let's say, on an Alabama, but they still played against a good defense.
Yeah. I said last year, one of the worst upsets in college football history is Michigan choking that way game against TCU away. Michigan was a 21-point better team. And somehow let TCU get by them.
I sit there and watched it. Of course, you know, also what hurt Michigan, too, they had a lot of people hurt.
Yeah.
And even if they would have won that game, they would have been no match for Georgia because they lost too many kids.
Yeah.
You know, and Michigan wasn't deep enough to overcome something like that. And of course, Ohio State had their chance to beat Georgia. Should have beat Georgia.
Sure.
And they had them. You know, it wasn't it? Marvin Harrison Jr. was hurt the whole second half.
Yep.
And they couldn't stop him in the first half. And then they still moved the football without him on the field and had an opportunity to win that game. Ohio State had Georgia's number. Definitely so. People can say what they want to. Just like when the Tennessee-Georgia game, yeah, Georgia dominated Tennessee. But what if Hooker would have hit the 2 wide-open receivers early in the game and we scored 14 instead of 3 and turned it into a track meet like Ohio State did?
Yeah, different game.
Yeah, oh yeah. You know, but, you know, Georgia was a better team that day because they were able to run the football and control the clock. And that's what they needed to do. They couldn't afford to get in a track meet, just like Alabama couldn't afford to get in a track meet.
Couple of games on Thursday night. South Dakota, Missouri, ought to be a snooze fest. Missouri, as good as South Dakota is, Missouri should always be the FCS team. But I think a critical game is the Florida Gators on the road at number 14, Utah. Billy Napier got to win a football game, Phil.
Yeah, definitely so. And, you know, last year they were very fortunate to win that game over Utah. I sit there and watched it, could not believe Utah let that game get away. And, of course, the one major factor in that game was Utah's quarterback, how healthy he.
Yeah.
They were talking about him possibly playing, but they didn't know if it was advisable, if it was a good thing. So we'll see, and I think that'll be the difference in that game. If he plays, I don't think Florida can stay with Utah, especially out there. But now, if he doesn't play, Florida's got a shot.
And Florida's starting Wisconsin transfer Graham Mertz, who's not beat the world, Phil. He's been very pedestrian at Wisconsin, so be interesting to see.
I think he was an interception machine.
Tennessee's Virginia. Virginia and Tennessee and Nashville. Going to go to that game. Looking forward to it. Tennessee ought to run all over the field. Virginia is a very devastated football team. Of course, having their last 2 games canceled. Will start a quarterback. The coolest thing about this game, Virginia is going to start a quarterback named Tony Muskett. If you're Virginia, it don't get any better than that.
Yeah, definitely so. You know, of course, you know, still Virginia's going to be very athletic.
Yes.
And they may be able to do some things, but, you know, Tennessee's probably not going to show a whole lot. So, you know, it's going to be interesting to see how that game goes. I think a lot of people was underselling Tennessee. Everybody, they ain't going to be what they were last year. Well, look what they did in the bowl game. And those people that we lost, most of them didn't even play in the bowl game.
I agree.
And then we're a year better and stronger on the defensive side of the ball. We don't have to be as good on offense because we should be better on defense. We shouldn't be giving up 40 and 50 points to the other team. We should be able to turn teams over and start stopping folks on third down, and that's what was killer to us last year. And if we can do that, the offense don't have to be perfect. What I'm thinking Tennessee's going to be better at running the football.
Oh, I think Tennessee will be much better. We don't people don't look at, Jabari Small, Jalen Wright, both of them close over 800 yards. I would not be shocked to see Jalen Wright, which I think he's actually pulled away from Jabari Small in that battle a little bit, Phil. I would not be shocked to see Jalen Wright put on 20 pounds, have a 1,300 yard season this year as a senior at Tennessee.
Yeah, because I think the difference in those two, Small is a little tougher. He's a little, he can break tackles. Wright has now, he has that breakaway speed. When he gets in the open, he's gone. That's what Tennessee's looking for. They just needed him to get a little bit stronger. That's something he wasn't last year. And Small was that tough one. He's the one you give it to when you needed 4 yards because he was going to find a way to get it. So if Wright can get that toughness, then he's going to be a superstar.
And also in that backfield, you got Dylan Sampson, of course, the freshman that played so well at spots last year. But I'm really looking forward to seeing Cam Seldon. We don't, if Cam Seldon had played at a 5A school in Alabama or a 6A school in Tennessee or somewhere else, he would have probably been a top 10 recruit. But he played at a 1A school in Virginia. And when you put on the film, Phil, it was like watching a grown man. I compare it to, remember, you probably don't remember this, but there was a Seinfeld episode where Kramer went and took karate lessons, and everybody in the class was 8 years old or 9 years old, and Kramer dominated them in karate. Well, that was kind of what it looked like watching Cam Seldon playing 1A football, because when he was on the field, nobody could touch him.
Yeah. So you don't really get a measuring stick, because naturally the stereotype is, well, you played on that team, you're going to be a 3-star football player. You're not going to measure up. But I forget who the running back is at Alabama, played at a real small school, and nobody expected anything out of him, and he ended up being unreal in college. And so you can't always go by that.
Of course, the greatest story of all of them, Herschel Walker played at single A Thomas County, Thomasville, and Georgia. Well, let's get through the rest of these games real fast. Ball State at Kentucky, kind of a yawner. Western Carolina at Arkansas. One game I do want to mention, got a local taste to it. Mercer goes to Ole Miss. Mercer's one of those programs that kind of seems always to play against the big boys. Kind of good, so that could be interesting.
Well, yeah, definitely so, because Ole Miss is one of those teams, they could beat an Alabama one week and lose to a Mercer the next. That's just the way they are. It's, because defensively you don't really, know about them. But Kiffin can stay in an Alabama game and then lose a Mercer game.
Absolutely.
So, that's just the way Ole Miss is. And when you watch them play, you don't count them out, but you better keep an eye on them against the team they should beat. So, that'll be an interesting game. You're definitely right about that.
A remade Auburn team, not much of a challenge in UMass, but it'll be interesting to see Hugh Freeze get on the field. So many transfers. I think Peyton Thorne's going to get the first snap at quarterback. This is a different Auburn team than the one Coach Cadillac ended it with last year.
Yeah, because it's one of those you look at. They can't fool around with a UMass and win 21-14. That's the kind of games they've had lately. They need to dominate that game and win it easily. And that way the fans will be, hey, and even if they get hammered by an SEC team down the road, you need to beat teams like this, like you should beat them. You shouldn't struggle with them.
Mississippi State still struggling, I think, with the death of Mike Leach. Opens their season with Southwest Louisiana. In the mismatch of the year, maybe, UT Martin opens the year at #1 Georgia. You just don't want to get anybody hurt if you're Georgia.
Well, really and truly, if you think about it, with Georgia, they play about 7 UT Martins to start the year.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, they did, of course, their game got canceled, what they would have played Oklahoma, but year in, year out, their schedule's this way anyway. Yeah, it's going to be tough on them. Of course, with Georgia, they still got a lot of question marks. They lost a lot of people off last year's team, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I know they're talented. There's no doubt about it. But if they was to lose one early, you could lose this football team.
Yeah, the thing.
If somebody was to surprise them early in the year, because right now, they ended the year dominant last year, but they're not dominant right now.
I think a lot of people are giving them a little bit of credit for lost 15 seniors or 15 defensive players last year, came back and was dominant again. But sometimes things like that don't repeat. It'll be interesting to see them against a South Carolina or somebody that's a not physically intimidated of Georgia type football team that can.
Well, yeah, I understand. Yeah, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're good.
Oh, what I was going to point out is look what Ohio State did to them.
Yeah,
made them speed up. And it didn't matter how good defensively Georgia was. Ohio State found mismatches. And, and everybody goes, I hear somebody say, everybody's figured Tennessee out now. Well, maybe the game plan changes when you play Georgia now. Ohio State showed people something. So how are they going to attack Georgia now? It's going to be a whole lot different, just like with Alabama. Alabama went to a more wide-open offense where the other team figured out, hey, Alabama's going to be good on defense, but let's attack them over the top. And that's what, over the last 2 or 3 years, Alabama's not been very good defensively. Now, I think they're going to try to go back to that and be more ball control on offense because they have big question marks at quarterback. They don't have them 5-star wide receivers out there, and their quarterback's not young anymore. And so they're a little different team. So I think they're going to go back to trying to protect their defense and get better defensively because even though Alabama's talented on defense, they give up a lot of big plays, and I think that comes with confidence. And so I think Alabama needs to play more ball control, and I think that's what they're going to look to do.
And the Tide opens up with MTSU and naming Melrose the starter. I heard Coach Saban give a quote at Media Days, Phil, that they got Bryce Thompson or Bryce a little bit. And I can see that when you have one of the best quarterbacks I've ever seen, maybe you do change the way you play football. And I expect this to be much more of what we've seen in Saban 5, 7, 10 years ago than what we saw last year.
Yeah, because, like I said, even Young didn't have the receivers the guys in the past has had.
No.
He was just very good at making plays and getting them out of bad plays. And everybody will say, well, yeah, Alabama was 1 win away from making the playoffs or playing the SEC championship, but they were also about 3 plays away from going 7-5.
Yeah.
So they weren't, Alabama had they were good offensively last year, but they weren't dominating because they are lacking on the defensive side of the ball.
Vanderbilt's got a chance to play in Alabama A&M to open up 2-0, Phil. When's the last time Vandy's been 2-0?
Yeah, that would be good for them. Of course, it's going to be a tough task when they get to the SEC schedule, but these are the games they've got to win. The Hawaii game was a must-win, and they got it done. It wasn't pretty, but they got it done. Of course, Hawaii was a whole lot better than they did in the past. I think their coaches got them believing in themselves a little bit, and they played well in that Vanderbilt game. Played about as well as they can play, I think. And so, but Alabama A&M is a game they should win. I'd put them at 2-0, and who knows with Vandy? I mean, maybe they'll get better. They've got some good skill people.
Always
but
do.
I'm not sold on them up front. Is my thing.
And the 2 games I think that are real good matchups: North Carolina, South Carolina. I think we're gonna. To me, in my head, there is no way that South Carolina stays as hot as they did the last 3 games of the year, at quarterback especially. So I think I want to see them do it this year. versus North Carolina, and maybe I get a little more respect. They wore Tennessee out, scored 63 on them. I just think that was more of an anomaly than it is fact.
Yeah, and I think Tennessee had some issues the week of the game that kind of contributed to that factor. And it is one of them nights. You can look around and say, I'll sit there and watch it. It's one of them nights where South Carolina, everything they didn't drop passes, quarterback was on, everything just went their way. I mean, some nights you just have to, take your hat off because it was just one of those days, and there wasn't anything Tennessee could do defensively. And sometimes you have those kinds. You're going to have one every year. It just happened to them.
If you can force, if South Carolina can have Spencer Rattler play at a Heisman level every night, okay. But if you don't, they're going to lose some football games badly.
Yeah, and that's one of those too. The Tennessee's got that one circled on the schedule.
Oh,
they want a little payback on that.
That's one I kind of like Tennessee's side on. And then the last game on Monday night, I think a potential good football game. Two teams that are super hyped. Two teams that you hear talked about in the playoffs. One of them's going to take a major blow week one. FSU and LSU, Phil. I still believe in the toughness of the SEC, so I would think I like LSU's side of this, but FSU starts the world with all the hype in the world too.
Yeah, both of them, maybe a little overhyped. I know LSU had a great year last year and ended up strong. But they're not to the point to where you can call them good every year. Their coach has just come in. He's just getting started good. So, I think it's one of those teams that's set up could be for failure. I think they're getting a little too much ink. And, they're one of those teams that I think are getting too much ink.
Well, I hate to say it, Phil, and I don't wish the summer away, but I wish the summer away. I want it to be 70 degrees and in a college football stadium and the sun just going down. And I know we probably won't get it this week. It's going to be hot, but we got college football and high school football. My favorite time of the year.
Yeah, the weather will be a lot more pleasant this Friday than it has been. So I think it's more toward that summer, summer weather that's starting to get toward fall. And it's going to be long. The fall's going to break. So I think after this weekend, maybe the weather will get a little nicer.
Even in Nashville, it's supposed to be in the mid-80s at kickoff. That's better than 103, which it's been the last 3 or 4 weeks. And I think it's not 90 degrees at games in. We'll want a nice cold bottle of water and enjoy it, but it's underway. And I'm not going to get on here and make predictions or talk about this or that. I just fully, you can look at our cover right now, both of us Tennessee fans. We try to be impartial, and we stay impartial for the most part. But I'm going to enjoy this football season, Phil, and I don't think it's a year Tennessee, for those folks that think Tennessee comes out and goes 7-5 this year. I don't think that's in the card. I really expect there's probably 2 games that will be underdogs to, and that would be Georgia and Alabama. Probably a favorite in other 10 games. A couple of those we could lose. Texas A&M's a losable game. South Carolina and Kentucky are losable games, but it's going to be a lot of fun this year.
Oh, yeah, definitely so. I mean, I feel a lot better about this year than I did at the start of last year. We won 11 games, so who knows what's going to happen.
All I know is if we beat Georgia and Knoxville, I have given up my Storming of the Field title. I'm going to leave that to Andrew Howard. Him and Anna Lee can storm the field, and I'll be up front because it took to about January to get a couple of those bruises healed from going down on the field after the Alabama game.
Yeah, I was just an observer in that. I tell you, there wasn't no way.
Well, I was a little more than an observer, and it took about 17 people to get me back my 300-pound self back out of there. So,
yeah,
a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, but I just wanted to watch. It was just fun to watch people.
You and Jeff, Friday night on WQSB. Tell everybody, of course, the app, and then the radio dials 105.1 in your area? Or?
That's it. That is it. And of course, follow us on Twitter and also Facebook. So
you and Jeff do. I got to listen just a little bit after the East Ridge game. You and Jeff was in mid-season form, but I could tell that you would like to have had a few more games to talk about.
Yeah. Well, the games got started late. It got us so busy. We weren't able to get many interviews in. So everything should settle in this week. Everybody will start at the same time, and we won't be, because some games didn't even start till 8 o'clock. So they run way late.
Give us one game in Alabama to keep an eye
on. For Cherokee County and Piedmont, it's going to be one. Of course, that battle of the valley between North Jackson and Scottsboro, it's always great. It's always a battle between them two.
And I'm going to give you Sequatchie County, Watertown up this way, and I'm also going to give you. I think it's important. Soddy, Daisy, and Ooltewah. I think the winner of that game. I think that's an important game to both schools. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, you're probably right. That's two teams that need to get going district-wise or region-wise, and I think that's an important matchup for both those teams.
Absolutely, and winnable game for both of them.
Definitely. So probably a dead even matchup.
All right, Phil. Anything else you want to bring up?
That's about it. I think we covered about everything. Maybe we'll have an interview next week. Maybe things kind of settle in.
Well, I do have somebody committed next week, but I hate to say this, but for in case he's listening, but I'm shopping his spot around if we get a couple of other people. Our friend Joey Everett from Farm Bureau, of course, in Dunlap, also the quarterback club over there, Sam's dad. He's agreed to come on either this week or next week, and just talk about fundraising. And I know it's at Sequatchie County, but I think it goes to all school field. Charters are 3 times the amount that it was a couple of years ago. Helmets are up, shells are up. Every school, if anybody's got any money to give, want to do something for something, give a little money to your local school. If you got a little donation to make.
Yeah, it's expensive to fund these programs now. Very expensive.
Well, and this weekend, I'll tell you a secret. Along the way, we're wearing uniforms that's never been worn before, a color combination at Sequatchie County, and in talking to Joey, he texts me and he goes, "We've got 4 sets and 2 helmets." He said that they've been a lot of money raised for us to have 4 sets of uniforms and 2 helmets.
No, you ain't kidding about that. That's for sure.
So, anyway, Phil, well, I will see you Saturday.
All right.
I'll be the fat guy sweating at the end of the row.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to it. It ought to be a lot of fun.
Yep. Thank you, buddy. I enjoyed it. For Phil Harris, Randall Cunningham, this is Beyond the Booth, a presentation. You know what, Phil? We haven't said it enough. 33 Sports. And, we need to give a little shout out, a little testimony. I've had a lot of blessings this week, and I'm truly thankful for them. I had a bad week last week, and I just kind of today, my week turned around, Phil, from last week. So I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, well, we always got to take advantage and be thankful for the good things for sure, because it don't always go your way. You got to look at it this way. You can go out there and have a bad day at work, but there's a lot of people that has it a whole lot worse.
Absolutely, and I'm always grateful for those days at work, even the good ones and bad ones. For Phil Harris, for Randall Cunningham, QB1, this is Beyond the Booth. We'll see you next Monday, same time, same place. Good night. God bless.